I'm Faris Ansari, working as a software developer at Frappe since 4 years, and I'm the one of the maintainer of the Frappe framework project and primary maintainer of Frappe Gantt, Frappe data table, and Frappe books. All of these are open source on GitHub. So let me start by uh, the point where I got introduced to programming. So I didn't know anything about programming before I joined my engineering college. I got introduced to programming there. And I was fascinated by the idea of writing command that a machine will execute. But I didn't learn much from the course material. Only the first year was good. The rest of the years didn't get much practical experience. Then I got an opportunity from a professor. They were struggling with automating attendance. So they had to uh, make Excel sheet every 2 weeks by hand. So they wanted to fix that. So I took that opportunity and started by building a mobile app to capture the attendance. So at that time, I did not know anything about mobile app development or anything about development for that matter. But yeah, I figured it out along the way as I learned everything bit by bit. So I realized that you could build web applications and then wrap them in a Cordova container and publish them as mobile apps. So that was pretty good at that time. So I used Ionic and learned Angular. So this is how it looked. And then we also built a student version where the students could check their attendance. And we had a lot of fun building these. So this I could call my first real project because there were real users that were using it and were giving feedback. And we were deploying changes every week, taking feedback from users. So we were facing problems like internet connectivity issues, which led us to make it offline first. And then we also had to learn Git because one of my friend was also working with me on it. And then we also learned how to publish it on the App Store and making the app icon and all that stuff. So that was pretty good. After that, there was a hackathon uh, that we got to know about, and we didn't know anything about hackathons. But there was no conditions except it had to be open source. So you had to build anything open source in 24 hours. And later, we were one of the winners. And then the organizer of the hackathon was Frappe Technologies. I went there, asked for an internship, and got a job instead. So here I am. Then it was my first job, obviously. They were building an open source ERP called ERP Next. And there was also the Frappe project, which was 1 million lines of monolithic monstrosity. And there were only 11 employees at that time. So all of this was very overwhelming for me, to say the least. It was also remote first. And it was at that time an 8-year-old startup. So all of these things were very new to me. I didn't know anything about ERP. I was pretty overwhelmed with a new framework. And yeah, I was also not sure what remote first was. Then eventually I got used to it. And then I developed an affinity towards UI design. So I was working mostly with the client side and working mostly with JavaScript. So there was this jQuery GANT component, which was pretty dated and did not go well with our modern aesthetic. So we wanted something modern. So then I went and looked around for solutions, and either they were too bloated or the ones that looked good were not free. For example, there was Google, there was a Gantt chart that was provided by Google, but it was not free. Then I decided to build it from scratch, and that resulted in Frappe Gantt, which also was my first library. So it has zero dependencies. It is modern by default, so the aesthetic is pretty modern, and you could customize it using CSS. And it was also interactive, so you could drag and change the start and end time slots. So this is the homepage. You can check it out on frappe.io/Gantt. Uh, Building this, I learned a lot of things. First, since it was zero dependencies, I had to learn DOM manipulation with vanilla JavaScript. Previously, we were using jQuery, but switching to vanilla JS was not at all uh, difficult. We are just uh, used to using all these libraries that we forget that vanilla JS is pretty powerful. Since it was based on SVG, so I also had to learn SVG quirks. For example, SVG is a foreign object in the HTML DOM. So the elements that render inside it follow a different uh, rule. So they are drawn rather than laid out. So that was one thing. And then since I had to make it look good, so I used inspect element to look at other Gantt libraries like the Google one, and tried to uh, imitate it for making our Gantt good. And then I also learned how to publish package on npm and making releases. So recently there was a tweet where someone were using Frappegant for their SaaS project. Pretty cool. Uh, the next thing was the next thing that came up was Slick Grid. So Slick Grid was very good, but it also was not going well with the aesthetic we had. So we wanted a modern themable data table, and it had to be fast because since we were using this for our open source ERP Next, there could be reports where there will be millions of rows, so it had to be fast. So all of that uh, we had to build to make it feature to make it feature rich like Slick Grid. So yeah, we ended up with Frappe data table. So you can check it out on frappe.io/data table. Building this, I learned a lot of things like JS profiling and performance. So I learned how to use the Chrome Developer Tools performance tab and try to find out what are the parts that were slowing the rendering. So I also learned about layout thrashing, and that for smooth updates, you have to make it update 60 frames per second, which was done using request animation frame. And then I also learned semantic versioning and the details of it, where what the patch minor and major version means. So that was pretty good. And not only building libraries from scratch, but we also use a lot of third party libraries, but not all the time they will fit to our needs. So for example, awesome pleat, we were using it for combo box component, where you type and you get search results. But there was a bug where it would not, the scroll would not work if it had a fixed height. So I sent a PR and it got merged. So that was pretty good. And then we have a date picker component, which is very, very good. It's called air date picker, but it did not have seconds in time, and we needed seconds. And I looked at their GitHub issues for existing issues, and I found that the maintainer had decided not to do seconds as a feature. So we decided to fork it and build the second feature in it. So we are maintaining a forked version of it. After that came Frappe Books. So Frappe Books is an accounting app. It is desktop first, which means it does not have anything to do with cloud. It stores all its file on your local machine. It is built for accounting and invoicing, and it works on all major operating systems. So this is a replacement for Tally, a free replacement for Tally, and other solutions like QuickBooks. If you want something that is offline and and a modern design, so this is how it looks, and you can check it out on frappebooks.com. This is also free and open source. So this is built on Electron, Vue.js, and Tailwind for UI. So we launched it on Product Hunt and got 300 over 300 upvotes, and also on Hacker News. It was uh, on the front page for quite some time, and it has 10 more than 10K downloads now. So yeah, this is no strings attached free accounting app. Building this, I learned uh, I learned to build actions. I learned to simplify complicated actions. So, for example, uh, in Frappe Books, when you change settings, so they are auto saved, just like how if you have used Mac. So whenever you change a setting in any settings dialog, it auto saves. So that is one less thing for the user to do. So that is so those kind of things are built in Frappe Books. I also spent a lot of time polishing every small feature, and I also had to do documentation and the website. So this was a full end-to-end experience on building and launching a product. So this was, yeah, pretty educational for me. So all of this uh, is what I work on Frappe. Working at Frappe is like maintaining an open source project and getting paid for it. We already know that it is pretty hard uh, maintaining uh, open source projects. Recently, there is an ESLint article where they are experimenting with paying open source contributors. So it is always a hard topic, but we at Frappe are uh, charging for premium services, but all of our software is free. Then working at Frappe is building new features, fixing bugs, reviewing PRs. So PRs are internal PRs or external PRs. All of them are treated with equal criticism. So yeah, we also do community engagement on GitHub on issues and our Discuss forum. And making regular releases and getting feedback from users. This is the Frappe team. We went to a company trip in February. This is the whole team. We are 40 odd people. So all of this was my journey, how I started with programming and then into open source and then maintaining those open source projects. So I'd like to leave you with these takeaways. So the first thing you could do to help an open source project is to use it. Once you use it, you become a user of that project. So that is uh, already a big win for that project. And then after you are using the project, then you should try to help others who are facing difficulties and report bugs. If you can fix them, you can fix them. Or like us, if you don't find a project, build your own version. It's never uh, too late to start from scratch. Another thing is, if you like to support open source project, talk about it and promote it. So that is also very useful for projects. Uh, Being an outreach, doing outreach for those projects, and write your learnings in the form of blogs. And don't worry about learning everything on day one. Just learn things as you go. I didn't know anything about making mobile apps, and I figured it out somehow. And the last thing is to just build things and have fun. So yeah, that was my talk. You can find me and my projects on GitHub at NetGem Forest, and I share my learnings and what I'm working on Twitter.